Week 1, Unit 1, Exercise 1. Sometimes, when people have behaved badly, it is wise not to treat them badly in return. It is better to forgive them and let bygones be bygones. In such instances, we might continue to recognize that they deserve worse, yet at the same time we choose to set this consideration aside. Some philosophers have found this paradoxical. How, they ask, can we say that someone deserves ill treatment and at the same time endorse forgiveness? If we ought to treat people as they deserve, and someone deserves to be treated badly, then forgiving him and giving up the bad treatment necessarily involves failing to do what we ought to do. It would follow, then, that we ought never to forgive people. Thus, the argument goes, we cannot both acknowledge deserts and countenance forgiveness. Exercise 2. Have you ever thought about what the world is doing when you are not watching? One day, while driving home from work, the freeway was jammed up, so I exited and took a long and windy road home through the countryside. I was thinking about this question and asked myself, what do I see right now? In that moment, I could see a rolling hillside covered in green grass under a bluish sunset. But what lay beyond it? Surely I would know in a minute or so when my car crested the hill. But I realized that my story of what lay beyond the hill was a fabrication in my mind. I could imagine the next hill, but the only reason I ascribe any reality to my imagination is that the next hill always appears when I get to the top of this one. My assumption that the next hillside exists is always verified, but it is verified by a future observation. In the present, all I know is what I am perceiving right now. Exercise 3. In a series of studies, participants were led to believe that they would have either a rich or impoverished social life in the future. For example, participants were given feedback from a supposed personality test, indicating either that they could expect many positive and meaningful social relationships in their lives, or that they would likely end up alone in the future. In a subsequent task, those participants who were made to feel low in belonging were faster to identify a smiling face in a set of sad and angry faces. Participants who were made to feel socially connected did not differ in the speed with which they could find smiling, angry, or sad faces. In another experiment, participants' eye movements were tracked. Low-belonging participants were more likely to look at smiling compared with angry, sad, and neutral faces, and they were slower to disengage their visual attention from smiling faces. These results show that the threat of social exclusion can lead people to direct their attention toward sources signaling acceptance. Exercise 4. Competition maintains the system of inequality in both schools and society. Supporting competitive systems is the ideology of competitive individualism, the notion that an individual's success or failure in life depends solely on her or his own efforts and merits, and that each person has an equal chance to compete and succeed. This discounts the powerful influence of race, gender, class, or any other aspects of a person's social identity on a person's chances for opportunity and success. Competitive individualism places the blame for failure squarely on people rather than on social institutions that privilege some people at the expense of others. The message is clear. Both winners and losers deserve what they get. Individualism is very different from individuality, which is the growth of each person's unique and full characteristics. Competitive individualism, in fact, hinders the growth of individuality in many people. Exercise 5. Working with solid woods invites us to use the woods that grow around us. It invites us to appreciate our trees and forests at a deeper level. With reverence for the material, we humans may admit to ourselves as true what we are beginning to learn about trees and forests. Peter Wohlleben, German forester, scientist, and author of The Hidden Life of Trees, and other scientists, including Suzanne Simard at the University of British Columbia, suggest that trees have the means to communicate with each other and protect each other from threat. Trees are sophisticated organisms that live in communities, support their sick neighbors, and have the capacity to make decisions and fight off predators. Wohlleben and Simard have been criticized for anthropomorphizing trees, but they maintain that to succeed in preserving our forests in a rapidly warming world, we must start to look at trees in an entirely new light. Woodworkers can play a role in promoting this understanding of trees. By better understanding how our materials are sourced, we can help to weave a sense of the interconnectedness of all life. By doing so, we can find greater meaning and purpose in our work, and greater respect from others as we do it. Exercise 6. The sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and feel of the world around us are solid, crisp, distinct, and real. We do not doubt them. Seeing is believing. The act of sensing something for ourselves cements it in reality. No longer a story told or heard, experienced secondhand, but a fixed representation of the real world around us, as solid as the floor beneath our feet, and as sharp as the knife blade that cuts our finger, as bright as the sun blinding us with its light. Our sensations are our portal into the physical world that envelops us, molds and shapes us. Through the act of sensation, doubt is cast aside, our faith in what we see or hear more absolute than a devout person's belief in God. In Aristotle's view, the 5 senses are the basis of all knowledge, through which we observe the essence of the world. Through our senses, the material world interacts with our psyche. Our inner world, our mind, is like soft wax imprinted with our sensory experiences. Exercise 7. If you walk down a path, the sounds of your footsteps provide you with information about your gait. It turns out that people feel heavier or lighter if the sounds they're fed from their footsteps are transformed through software. Via clever experimental tricks, a young researcher has shown that high pitches associated with footfalls cause people to feel lighter, whereas low pitches cause people to feel heavier. She has also found that where you think your own hand is can be influenced by where you hear your hand is. In work by others, it has been shown that where your hand seems to be can be dramatically affected if you feel your hand being stroked, while the hand you see being stroked isn't actually your hand, but instead is a rubber replica. The fact that you can be fooled into thinking your hand is several inches away from where it actually is shows that you are more strongly tuned to feedback than you might have imagined. Exercise 8. A simple definition of chain of command is simply the order of authority and power in any organization. What is important to note about chain of command is that decisions should be made only by those who have responsibility for those decisions. If leaders usurp the authority of the leaders under them and make decisions at those levels, they destroy the credibility of their subordinates. We see examples of this all the time. A staff member is angry with the decision of their boss and wants to manipulate that decision by going to the person over that individual. When this happens, the more senior leader in this situation needs to send the staff person back to deal with their direct boss to give them the opportunity to fix the situation, rather than riding in on their white horse to fix it for the staff. Open-door policies do not mean that you are there to fix things, but rather to give advice on the next steps that need to be followed. Exercise 9. Know-how and information are distinct, but they are also intimately connected. The ability of a system to pack know-how depends largely on the fluidity with which it can use information to reconstruct the dynamic networks it needs to accumulate that know-how. A seed is a perfect example of this. It is a package containing both the know-how and the information needed to create a plant, such as a tree. The development of a tree is nothing other than the majestic unpacking of know-how, facilitated by genetic information. A seed unpacking into a tree unpacks the know-how needed to perform photosynthesis, to build the structures that will transport nutrients and water from the ground to the leaves, and to defend itself against pests. A seed unpacking into a tree is an example of know-how and information being unpacked into a structure that is more complex than the one that begot it. The tree has the ability to perform functions that were absent in the seed. Exercise 10. An emerging organizing theme in neuroscience is that the brain has evolved, fundamentally, to make predictions. The claim here is not that the business of anticipating events is one of the brain's important chores. It is the main reason for having big brains in the first place. It's a perspective that seems counterintuitive at first, but you will warm up to it as soon as you see how the brain handles otherwise puzzling facts. The core idea is as follows. We can interact with the world in an infinite number of ways. Such complexity would quickly overwhelm us. So for behavior to be purposeful and timely in such a high-dimensional environment, the set of possible choices must be pruned. We accomplish this by continuously, automatically, and importantly, unconsciously generating expectations that meaningfully inform, constrain, perception, and action at every moment in life. Even when we daydream and don't engage in a specific activity, the brain doesn't idle, but actively produces predictions that anticipate future events. Exercise 11. Fingerprints develop early in the pregnancy period. Between the 6th and 13th weeks of life, the characteristic bumps are already forming on the fetal fingers and palms. Innumerable environmental factors will now influence the formation of the unique pattern, including the exact position of the fetus in the womb at an exact moment, and the exact composition and density of surrounding amniotic fluid that circulates around the fingers as they touch whatever they meet. The movement of the baby as he or she shifts around inside the womb, and the speed and size to which he or she grows, all affect how the fingerprint patterns form, and ensure that the truly unique physical feature which will distinguish each of us from anyone else is never copied. In the entire course of human history, there is virtually no chance of the same exact fingerprint pattern forming twice, because there is no chance of an identical set of prenatal events occurring to the same extent in the same way at the same time. And while other physical characteristics will change with age, your fingerprint remains the same right up to the grave. Touch something and you leave on it a telling trace of your uniqueness. Exercise 12. at the University of the West of England conducted a survey of 5,000 passengers commuting to London from the Midlands. 53% of them used Wi-Fi to catch up on work, thus essentially working. Email is the thin end of a wedge of work activities. Email allows someone to start engaging with their tasks, boss, and colleagues before they even physically set foot in the office, preparing themselves psychologically for the role they need to play. In his 2019 paper, Between Home and Work, Commuting as an Opportunity for Role Transitions, John Jakimowicz from Harvard Business School found that commuting offered an opportunity to conduct work-related prospection and boundary management strategies, a process of planning ahead that helps busy parents and executives get the most out of their day and feel more satisfied. When someone applies makeup on a busy early morning train into work or in their car, they are literally putting their game face on. Checking email complements this psychological preparation for work, giving someone a liminal zone before they are actually obligated to respond.